Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Civil Cyber Forum. Civil Cyber Forum is an independent organization founded in Zurich, and we are supporting the capacity building, and we want to support also civil cyber ecosystem in cyberspace. Civil Cyber Forum is also officially recognized course provider, cybersecurity course provider by Swiss government. My name is Samir Aliyev. I am founder of Civil Cyber Forum and program director at the University of St. Gallen. Also, today we are honored to host Mr. Cyber of Switzerland, Mr. Florian Schütz. Welcome. Mr. Florian Schütz is Federal Cyber Security Delegate at Swiss Federal Administration, as you see from the sharing. Let me stop the sharing. That will be great. I hope you hear me right now. Then Mr. Florian Schütz is also head of National Cybersecurity of Switzerland. Mr. Schütz, thank you very much for having time and coming to our session. Thank
you for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
You're welcome. We are all concerned about recent developments in cybersecurity, of course, and the role and the position of Switzerland in cyberspace. But before we start our panel discussion, I would like to share some housekeeping rules of this webinar. So we are going to start this webinar within 5 minutes. This is Ask an Expert webinar. We have several questions. I will ask Mr. Schütz and also our audience. You can send your question using Q&A button on the bottom of your windows. Also, please don't be shy to be active, to interact with each other, with another attendees. This session is recorded and we will share the record afterward on our homepage. So, Mr. Schütz, thank you again. And I would like to ask you to introduce yourself short and about your administration, National Cybersecurity Center of Switzerland. Then we will go for the questions later on.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So as I was very nicely introduced, my name is Florian Schütz. I'm the Swiss delegate for cybersecurity. And I'd like to take 4 or 5 minutes to explain to you what that actually means. So I'm responsible to coordinate all matters cyber across government. As you might be aware, we have 3 main responsibilities within government when it comes to cyber. We do have the cyber crime responsibility, which is with the Department of Justice. We do have the cyber defense responsibility, which is military and intelligence defense with the Department of Defense. And we have cybersecurity as a main responsibility with the financial department. So, of course, also other departments have cybersecurity needs, and also they do things. And capabilities are also fragmented across government. We're not, we don't have 40,000 people just working in cyber and doing everything. So we need to optimize, and this leads to an increased coordination effort. I'm directly answering to the cyber board of our federal councillors, and I'm representing their 2 core groups. One is the Cyber Core Group that deals mostly with matters across government, and the steering group for the National Cybersecurity Strategy. And that brings me to a very important point. Switzerland has a cybersecurity strategy. It is my responsibility to enable us to actually fulfill this strategy. But of course, this is never done alone, right? This is collaboration not only within government, but also with the cantons, but also with private entities that contribute to this strategy. And last but not least, it's very important to also have an exchange with you, whoever listens in here, because in the end, everyone is affected by the digitalization and therefore has a certain need for cybersecurity. And I think also what's important to note is that the current strategy runs till end of 2022. And we will start working on a new strategy on the version 3, which then continues from 2022 on very soon. We already discussed that we would like to shift a little bit the focus from the risks also into the opportunities. because wherever there is risk, there is opportunity. That's what you learn in your introductory economics course, right? And we definitely are working on many opportunities, and that should be properly reflected in the strategy. And also, we are really thinking about, with my colleagues from the different departments, and actually with people like you who have ideas of where to put the focus to actually manage the risk properly, because that's very important. Even though we often talk about cybersecurity, it's never 100% secure unless you just do nothing, right? It's like in life. If you stand up in the morning, you have a risk of having an accident. You take that into account because the likelihood is very, very small, and you move on. And I think that's important. The National Cybersecurity Center was mentioned. The National Cybersecurity Center is also a collaborative effort. It consists mainly of my line organization, but as I said, we couldn't do our job with our colleagues from other teams in government. And the National Cybersecurity Center really provides information about how to get more secure. It also offers, since beginning of the year, better reporting form for cyber incidents. So if you do have any problem where you need help, or if you want to report something, you can go to ncsc.ch and put the report in there. You will also find a lot of material on best practices and what to do. So I'm not going to explain to you the full NCSC. You just can go and take a look and hopefully engage with us.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Schütz. Actually, we have a lot of questions. I have received several pages of questions. First of all, I would like to start with those questions that I have on my iPad. Then after 30 minutes, I will ask our audience to send their questions that we can answer them live related to cybersecurity and related to Switzerland. That will be great. So let's get right into the first question for you and for our audience. What would you describe as being a most fascinating aspect regarding cybersecurity in Switzerland? What stands out the most interesting thing about how Switzerland acts to prepare cybersecurity? Is Switzerland cyber secure?
So I take this as 3 questions in one, right? So is it cyber secure? I mean, as I said, there is no state of full security, obviously. We don't have official metrics or ranking where we could actually rank it. Cybersecurity per se is not well defined as a big discipline. But, you know, a gut feeling is that we're somewhere in the middle. You know, we can definitely get better as a whole, but we're definitely not terrible. So that's it. And that brings me also to the point that was the first part of the question. What is most interesting about cybersecurity in Switzerland? And actually, I think one of the more interesting points is we have excellent IT infrastructure. We have very modern infrastructure. We have a high level of connectivity, and we're really, really good at that. While on the service side, on be it digitalization, e-commerce, we're not upfront. And I do think actually we have a lot of potential in cybersecurity if we make our infrastructure, but also our platforms to build services upon secure from, you know, bringing in a basic security from the beginning, so that actually companies can already count on certain minimal security standards met. That decreases the cost in the companies because the cost is there increasing, and they can focus on the real security, which is not baseline security, but actually protecting your IT asset concerning to your business process. And I think that could be a very, very good advantage of Switzerland in international competition.
Great. That's really great answer. And I hope that Switzerland will be the central hub of the world for the cybersecurity. And cybersecurity is shared responsibility. And national cybersecurity is actually new organization or administration in Switzerland, and you have a framework. Do you think that this national cybersecurity framework is effective and it helps to all organizations, private and public sector in Switzerland, and it will be more effective when you advance it, when you update it in next upcoming years?
So actually, I think one of the learnings from the first strategy that was valid until 2018 was that measuring the effectiveness is not that simple. And in the process of the second strategy, we started improving measurement of efficiency. I need to be honest, we're not yet at the top level, right? We don't yet have our very nice KPI boards for everything. However, we introduced maturity levels, so we don't want to be top everywhere, right? You can't be the best in every discipline. Cyber has many, many different disciplines. So we did that, and we are now sort of giving a qualitative assessment on where we stand and if we will reach the goals. So I think that's one thing that also in the next strategy we have to do even better to make it better measurable and also easier to communicate to the public, who in the end, is the consumer of that. Do I think we do everything excellent in the strategy? No, I don't think we do everything excellent. I do think we do a good job overall. I do think we have some points where we're really good. We do have some points where we definitely need to get better. Sometimes it's also just difficult because of the political setup in Switzerland. So contrary to other countries, we have a direct democracy, and B, we have the cantons that have a lot of responsibilities. So for example, policing is a cantonal responsibility. It's even if the FedPol cannot do everything, right? They have a very, very clear mission. So that's just some peculiarities that we need to deal with. And actually, sometimes it makes it a little bit more complicated, but quite often it also leads to more resilient solutions. And I think we still have to find the sweet spot between collaborating and standardizing and actually allowing individualism within that system.
Great, thank you very much. You just mentioned about the role of Switzerland, and Switzerland is also a neutral country. This is known to everyone. Do you think that there's an impact being a neutral on cybersecurity also in international policy making in Geneva, from Geneva perspective? Is there an impact being neutral and being in cyberspace and leading the countries in cyberspace?
So I do think being neutral actually is a big benefit in cyberspace. It's important to understand that neutral does not mean you do nothing, right? Neutral just means you try to not take a side. You try to actually work on resolving a problem, right? And I think from that, you have to build a lot of trust with different parties. And also in the traditional domains, for example, in diplomacy and so on, Switzerland has built a lot of trust, and we can use that in cyberspace, especially in cyberspace. It's pretty, I don't want to say easy, but it's not that difficult to do, for example, false flag operations, to claim you're someone you are not, or to not tell exactly the truth. Sometimes the truth is hard to verify. And I think actually because trust is such inherent aspect in cybersecurity, to actually allow different players with different goals that don't always play fair to collaborate in a stable environment anyways, I think that's where Switzerland can use its experience from building trust and its neutral position to be a reliable partner and actually contributing to stability in the cyberspace.
Super, very good answer actually. The next question about, again, we are coming back to National Cyber Security Center. How do you support startups, private organizations, and private people, individuals, in terms of cyber threats?
Yes, so it's important to note that the National Cyber Security Center was officially started last year, 1st of July. So we're still in the build-up phase. We're not yet there where we want to be. What we already have is, I mentioned the website where there is a lot of information, and we collaborate, for example, with economic associations. We also currently have a project where we discuss about how to scale the services of Melanie. So Melanie, for those who know it, is or don't know it, it's supporting critical infrastructure if they are attacked, and also with early warning. It's a collaboration between the Department of Defense and Department of Finance. And we are actually checking how we can scale that. This is now part of NCSC. Aside that, we also have, of course, our engineers, our people from Melanie that actually go and help if there is need for help. So if you have a technical incident and you qualify as critical infrastructure, they can give us a call, we help them. We also, on a best effort basis, try to help companies as much as we can. And we also give early warnings. So if we get notified about a problem somewhere, we warn these companies. There, I must say, this is sometimes more successful, sometimes less. There are companies that just ignore the warning. So that's probably a little bit from my side. If you work in a company, please take the warning seriously if we give them. And you specifically asked about startups. So there's really two things, and both of them are in development. They're not yet full-fledged, but I'm exchanging with startups. I don't want to say often, but regularly. And I think when it comes to cybersecurity startups, we need to better understand what makes it hard for them to succeed at the market and also become an international company, and to define how we can generate framing conditions that makes it a little bit easier for them in a very risk-averse culture, right? And the other thing is really startups themselves. How can we actually make it easier for them to be secure from the beginning? Because startup faces a huge problem, right? Time to market is key. If you're not first at the market, you're gone. Very simple. So, security really isn't your first issue. If you can drop security and be a month earlier, that's probably what a startup is going to do. Because if you take that additional month, you're gone anyways, right? So it's a reasonable decision from a risk perspective. And I do think we just need to care for that. And we need to find best practices and models that are easy and fast to implement for startups, so that they don't end up in the end being successful and having to fix their full infrastructure, which often is impossible, right?
Great. But do you think that cybersecurity is a cost or investment for especially startups?
It's a very good question, actually. And it's one where I like to take an unpopular opinion. In my opinion, yes, it costs a little bit, but it forces you to think about your infrastructure and about your services. Because what a lot of people often get wrong is that they think cybersecurity is something where you can check the box and it's done. That's baseline security, right? Real cybersecurity actually takes your business processes into account. So let me make a very simple example. If you ship containers around the world, one of your cyber risks is that you lose access to your tracking system, right? And if that database is corrupted and you can't really restore it, even if you can restore it a day later, those containers have moved and probably no one knows where they are. You just lost all your business assets. So from that business risk, you want to focus on securing actually your tracking system, right? Very simplified example. And if you want to do that, you need to understand your business process. You need to understand your value proposition. You need to understand your risk landscape. And being forced to understand it allows you to become more efficient in your business. And actually, I've seen that with some companies in Germany when they implemented the general data protection rules. They actually needed to understand where they generate data and how they process it, and they can make this much more efficient due to a law. So yes, it inflicts cost, but at the same time, the savings can be higher because it forces you to do things that otherwise you probably would not identify as an optimization potential.
Great. Yes, we are talking all the strategy and the cybersecurity, the plan, process. Do we have enough experts in Switzerland that startups, organizations, public and private sectors, they can hire and they can ensure the security in their company?
This question brings me to a very passionate topic of mine. So you might have to stop me, but I try to be short. So I absolutely believe we have enough specialists. I do think we have, because we have top universities, a top education system. When we look at ETH and EPFL, they're among the top ranking universities in the world. They generate output. I think we have them. Will there ever be enough? Probably not, scarce resources, but that's okay. But I think we have them. The question is, how can we actually get them to work in Switzerland? So let me give you a story. I got some friends and they approached me and they told me, look, Florian, I'm thinking of leaving the country because I cannot make a career in Switzerland. I will never make it to the management board, even though I could. you know, I'm just not accepted. I'm considered the techie, the tech person.
Yes.
And, you know, that's a problem. That's a cultural problem. These are smart people leaving the country, going to work somewhere else. We have a challenge with the startups, you know, well-educated people that enter the economy that struggle to actually scale in Switzerland. They go, and some of them do the startups abroad, and they're probably not coming back. Another thing is, I do think we overemphasize the need for cybersecurity specialists, and we underemphasize the need for general education in security matters. What do I mean by that? Let's take, for example, a web developer that develops a front end to your web application. If that person doesn't know security, and most of them don't, and it's not because they're not intelligent, it's because no one taught them, right? They will not develop a secure web application. Does your company have the money to hire a cybersecurity specialist for every 3 developers that develop an application? I don't think so,
No.
right? It's much cheaper to actually teach the web application developer web application security. The person doesn't need to know the network security part, the operating system security part,
Sure.
or about ICS systems, but you know, teach them. If you have a car mechanic that works on a car that today are computers on wheels, they need to know about the security of these systems. If you're mechatronic, if you're anything, right? I think we need to embed very targeted security knowledge into the curricula, also in the apprenticeship, right, of people that work with technology that are specific to their job. And I think that would position Switzerland in a very, very strong position of talent-wise, because also abroad, that's something you need, right? Well, I said,
Yes.
I'm passionate about this topic, so I get carried away a bit.
The cybersecurity career starts with education, right education. That's why we also support to increase the capacity of Switzerland. And that's why we offer several cybersecurity education. And we have students, they are engineers, and they will be in cybersecurity specialists according to ICT Berufsbildung. I have a very interesting question that might be interesting to our students, also our audience. Last year, October, Uli Maurer had announced that the Bundes or the federal government need 20 cybersecurity experts that they will hire in near future. Did you find them?
So I just can start hiring them this year. So I'm actually publishing the job. So, you know, if you're interested and qualified, please apply. Hunting talent is not easy. So I'm very confident we find them. I've been lucky enough to know amazing people in the security community. And usually I just, you know, ask them to help me and find good people, and then word spreads. The other thing is also, one very important trick to actually find people is don't think you're in the strong position. The people at the market are in the strong position, and you need to understand that, right? And you need to spark their interest because they can choose. And also this means just when publishing the job ad, and honestly, I do think we can get better there, but we're, you know, on the way, you know, formulated in a way that it actually attracts a very diverse audience of people, you know, and it's, we did study at the former company I worked, where I had an employee that was very passionate about it, even just changing little words, like, you know, just stating that's what we look for, but if you have a better idea what you could contribute and what we should do different, apply anyway, right? And yes, you will get some applications that are not very interesting. It takes you 1 minute to screen the CV and drop it, right? But sometimes you get someone who says, look, I think you're wrong. You should do it like that. And that's probably the person you're looking for, because they're the specialists that know better in detail how things work than you do.
Yes, yeah, I do agree with you. Absolutely, that's for sure. There is another data from ICT Berufsbildung or Further Education Association of Switzerland. In September 10, they had a report. They said that there will be need for 118,000 ICT specialists in Switzerland next 7 to 8 years. How do you see the next 7 to 8 years in Switzerland? Do you think that there will be huge need to the experts that they need to be hired by Swiss organizations?
So I didn't do the statistics, so I can't really comment on that statistic. I don't have the figures for Switzerland, so I can't really tell you whether it's more or less or that's the right number. What I can tell you is that we need to be very careful in defining what is a cybersecurity job, right? And we actually had this discussion inside government because we never clearly defined, does something qualify as a cybersecurity job or not? So sometimes we get asked, how many people work in cybersecurity at the government? We can't tell because, you know, this is just not very clear. And I think we need to improve there to really, you know, have better profiles to really say what's the job done. As I said before, I do think we will need more specialists. I think there's a market for specialists. It's not going to drain out. Digitalization is going to increase, so that's going forward. But also we need, and I think that's the more important part, we need to have security knowledge in the areas for the people that are specialized in different disciplines. You know, to me, it's completely, look, 30 years ago, if you were a programmer, you basically needed to know in detail what your program does. This hasn't gone easier today. We have the frameworks, it's become more complicated. I absolutely see that. But still, I think when you're a programmer, you need to have certain skills. You need to make your application performant. You need to understand how to calculate queues for arriving messages so they don't overflow. And you need to know how to develop it in a secure manner. And I think when we focus on that, many of those mentioned positions will, you know, not fall away, but be covered by this. But again, that's not scientific data. That's my personal view.
Yeah, thank you very much for your thoughts and concerns. Let's go a little bit wider or broadly. How would you describe the perception of the civil population regarding cybersecurity and the threats that it poses? What could be done, or what are the plans to increase awareness in Switzerland for the population that they are not technical, or elderly people, they get a kind of scam or phishing emails? What are the strategy, or what can we do in private sector? What can you do in administration?
Yes, so I mean, it's a difficult question to answer. First, I don't think that Swiss people are better or worse than people in other parts of the world when it comes to security awareness, when it comes to scams. I think it's easier to target Swiss population than some areas because we have highly networked, we have good infrastructure, we have good networks, we have almost everyone has a mobile phone or two. So, you know, we have that. What do we do? So on the one hand side, we collaborate with other organizations. For example, with we are currently, and this will be released, or maybe it was already an awareness week this year, where we collaborate, where we contribute. It's not from the government, but we contribute to actually reach people, where 1 week different topics are covered. We do now newly, if you basically report something to us, so you know, you can, as a private person, I received a phishing email, or I received an email and it looks strange, you will directly get instructions on what to do, right? So just to educate yourself, oh, you might be a victim, that's what you can do. Another thing that we do is presentations like here, right? Sometimes we're in companies, but we're also private people, so it's important that we hear it and take that. Also when it comes to awareness, so we really now also report on the amount of reportings that we got, on what the reportings are, also on our website. We are currently building up some social media streams where we can inform a little bit better. What we don't plan on doing is warn about anything, right? Because that's just an overload, right? If you're interested, you can subscribe to your newsletter from your favorite security provider and you get that. But really inform when there is an inherent risk to the population itself. Also, what we are planning is to actually offer a channel where we take reports about vulnerabilities and then approach the affected manufacturer of the products to actually fix them and support them. So today you can also report, like, you know, problems that you found. We just want to make it a little better to really work with the companies to fix their product, because in the end, product security will become a very important topic. And as a private person, you just can't evaluate the security of your product. You basically need to believe what is said. And There's an interesting initiative in that regard from the Canton of Zug for a test center. This is more targeted towards businesses. You also asked about businesses, where basically if you do a procurement, it's targeted at critical infrastructure, but could be open for anyone. But basically, if you procure something, let's say, a smart rail system or something that you can't test yourself for security, and you have the last three and you need to make a decision, you can actually put it in there, get a neutral test result, and then make your informed decision. I think that's different initiatives. Of course, also we work very closely with police. Police has some very good information programs. This starts with the Swiss Criminal Prevention. They have a comic, for kids and teenagers, which is very important. They have information leaflets. I think that's really it. I think in the end, what is key is that we should not scare people to use IT. So I'm not a big fan of the approach. Everything is dark, everything is bad. I mean, I use computers every day, right? And if a sophisticated attack is there, there's not much I can do, right? Even though I know how these things work, I know how good they are. If a phishing is very well made, there's a chance I click, to be very honest, right? If it's well made, I'm not scared. I mean, I was once the victim of a fraud 15 years ago. That was the last time. So yes, there happen things, and we should be careful, right? It's like with Corona, wash your hands, right? Be careful, exactly. But don't be scared. And fear mongering is not a good thing.
Now, another question came to my mind. You just mentioned coronavirus, and there is Federal Authority for Healthcare, BAG, and they inform us almost every day. We get some kind of social media message or the post that we have to be careful with Corona and for our community. Do you think the National Center will be kind of BAG of Switzerland, Cyber BAG, to inform the population, to post awareness information every day, and people will get benefit out of it?
So I don't think every day in a normal situation is useful, right? And we're in a very normal situation in cyberspace. Of course, if there is a crisis, we will just, react and contribute and inform. I do think we already give quite some information. We can maybe do a better job in letting people know where they can access it. So I see a fragmentation in that area. I do think it is our duty to inform about the facts, so about things that we know, or very clearly state that we don't know. I see the NCSC as really your advisor that presents you what is known and lets you then make your educated decision. I think we can increase there maybe the availability of information, but I don't think every day does make a lot of sense, because even Corona now, right? It's a serious situation. You get it every day, but you already have people that get tired of hearing it every day. And it's hard to dial that in. It takes a lot of resources, and it's not something you want to do during normal life.
Normal life. All right. Actually, your new website is full of information. There's also a glossary. All of our attendees, they can check National Center's websites. There are a lot of information about the cyber threats. You can inform yourself. You can download information, share your peers and colleagues at the work. That it will be very, very helpful. Mr. Schütz, you just noticed that there are reports you are getting, and we have seen on your homepage that you get weekly 200-300 notification. Would you like to give us some kind of data or information that what are the main cyber threats, or what are the main notifications that you are getting from business and population?
Yes, happy
top
to do
three,
so.
I would say top 3 or top 5.
So because this changes weekly, let me just take a look at the website so I can tell you. An all-time favorite is always fraud, right?
Yes.
That's really the one that we see the most. That's almost 2/3 of the reports we get. Now, fraud can be wide range, right? It can be that you get a text message telling you get reimbursement for customs. Well, most likely not. It can be that you're actually invited to do investments, online investments, and then even you receive money. So you invest 20 francs, you get back 100. Then you should really stop, because that's probably as much as you're going to make on your return on investment. But they push it up, and we see people losing 50,000, 100,000 Swiss francs in these scams. So and these are intelligent people, right? The people that do these scams are very clever. They combine often voice and online targeting. So that's another one. I think the second one is really phishing for credentials. That's the second most we see. And then if you check the homepage, actually, the third one is miscellaneous. Now, of course, miscellaneous is everything that doesn't fit. We see malware as one of the bigger threats, especially ransomware. So we had also, by the way, talking about malware, we had this Emotet wave where basically Europol just yesterday announced that they actually successfully conducted an operation against the people behind Emotet. So let's see how long this stays quiet. The thing is, from the numbers, this is not as high. So last week we had 15 malware cases. The thing is, the impact there is usually rather high. So if you're a victim of a ransomware attack and your stuff is encrypted, this costs, very, very quickly up to 100,000 Swiss francs. So even though they are less, they are probably more serious than a phishing email that was reported where someone didn't enter anything. But that's really the big things. The scams, I think, is most relevant for the population to watch out for this. Businesses really, put minimal security in your systems, and you should be good from malware. Targeted attacks are a different story. Then you're basically not very lucky if you're the victim. You can do something against that, but most fail at the baseline security.
Great, thank you very much. Are you tired?
Me? No. Why?
No? Okay.
Do I look tired?
No, I have a lot of questions. That's why I'm asking.
Oh no, go on. I'm more than happy to answer any question you have. And the worst answer you can get is actually I won't say anything. So
great. So I finished list of my questions. They were a lot, and I'm going to the question from our audience. I will read them from the iPad, and we will try to find the answer to them. Mr. Schütz, how do you rate the state of digitalization and cybersecurity in Switzerland compared to European Union, the United States, Russia, and China? Is there, and yes, how its collaboration on a daily basis with these nations? Thank you in advance, Tamas Nagy.
So, tough one to begin with. Good question. So I don't want to compare cybersecurity to other nations because I think it's hardly comparable. We would really need to deep dive in the disciplines and then discuss there, right? And I don't have the overview of that, so I don't want to compare on that level. Let me instead explain a little bit the differences between the mentioned nations, right? So as I said, Switzerland has a setup with the cantons, with the economy. We don't really like regulation, so we like to preserve freedom of economy and people. And that's one of the pillars. And that means, in my opinion, in just one sentence, we are pretty good at resilience, but we are not the fastest in actually cutting-edge cybersecurity. When I look at the European Union, and the European Union is very fragmented. It's not like when it comes to cybersecurity, not like one standard that is there everywhere. The European Union, however, has a strong focus on privacy, which I also subsume under cybersecurity. Some people don't, I do. Actually, I think that's one of the big topics there. They have a challenge to actually agree on things on a level, but whenever they do, it has very far-reaching consequences that also influences their neighbors, right? And the US actually, of course, that's a whole different scale, right? They have thousands of people working alone in, or tens of thousands of people alone in government working for cyber. They are also, so when you look at different areas, right? So they're They have a challenge with their critical infrastructure because it's a large country, it's dispersed, it's especially countryside infrastructure is less modern than the one in the cities. That's their challenge. On the other hand side, they do have a lot of experience from international engagement, from participating in, police raids against criminals, from their own operations that they conduct. So that's more in that area, I'd say. Was there another country that I forgot?
Russia and China.
Russia, I think Russia is interesting when you look at it. They have a very different understanding of cyber than we do, right? So for example, information warfare is part of cyber. And also, so there was this one incident like many years ago where there was a tweet, they want to go and demonstrate in front of the Kremlin. And this was considered a cyber operation because Twitter was used. We would not consider that a cyber operation, right? So it's a very different understanding. Russia, of course, has understood that cyber is a means to protect power.
Yes.
So we moved from Cold War bipolar world into monopolar world into today multipolar world. So they very much understand that you need to be present in cyberspace to play a role in that world. When it comes to China, I think China is very, very strongly focusing on boosting their economics also through cyber. It means, of course, they have a lot of staff, they can conduct operations. They also have sort of a understanding, and that's from public sources. So they have an understanding that if some private person, attacks or hacks a website, if that's not against the interest of the government, it's probably not that attractive to pursue, right?
Yes.
Copying, for example, is an honor, right? If you're copied in China, that's an honor to you because you made something that good that it's copied. So that changes the dynamics. They very well understood that access to rare earth metals and other resources to build chips and dominate the chip industry is very important. That's why they do investments in Africa, heavily investments.
Mm-hmm.
So they really play on becoming an economic powerhouse and also sustain, of course, the influx of money to sustain their economy. And there's lots of discussion whether that's sustainable or not, but they, of course, have interests in cyber, which a little bit limits their way of operation, right? For them, it's actually bad if they lose trust in Chinese products. So yes. Many Western civilizations don't trust the Huawei products, even though, let's be honest, Huawei products are in almost every data center in the world. But this is a problem for them, right? Because it limits the exports, it limits it's also a dominating factor, right? If you basically supply the majority of IT in the world, well, no one is just going to switch that off. These are not systems that you can just switch off and replace, right? So I think that's a little bit the difference is, and so it's hard to compare. How do we collaborate was the second question. We collaborate actually very, very well on an international level. So we have different forms of collaboration, of course. We have department-specific collaborations. So for example, the armed forces exchange information with other armed forces, with NATO and so on. Intelligence services collaborate. We also have, we are exchanging information with the European GovCerts. There's a network of government certs that exchange information about attacks. We're actually exchanging not only with European GovCerts, but also with GovCerts in US or Asia. So these networks are there, they're running, and they're doing their job every day. So every day we get information about targets in Switzerland and we try to help them. And vice versa, if we see a target abroad, we tell our colleagues, of course. It's sharing is caring, right?
Thanks a lot for the board answer. The next question is coming from Sergio Justiniano. What are the main cyber threats for companies in Switzerland? We might talk about it a little bit. Maybe you can tell us top 5 threats that you have information insights. Yeah,
so I think one underestimated threat is still the inside threat. It's actually people that get upset with your company. And I've worked in e-commerce and I've seen it. We had cases, not every week, but once a year probably, sometimes a little bit more. Sometimes it's naivety. It's, people that build things, that develop things, that want to show off, that want to tell the world what they did, and just leak your source code or your product data or whatever. Some people are just upset, maybe their job was terminated or they're not very happy and they do that. So that's definitely a threat you should not underestimate. It's not a threat you can basically solve by, checking on everyone. That generates a bad culture. In my opinion, that threat is best met by generating a culture where people actually care for your company. They will never care as much as you as the owner, right? But if they like where they are, if they can speak their mind, if they feel connected to what the company does and they understand the values, that's the best countermeasure. Second one is definitely lack of baseline security. Unpatched systems, systems that are open to the internet, open endpoints. That's quite often when actually companies use cloud services. And so, for example, if you use, that's just an example, right? Because that's the one I'm most familiar with. If you use Amazon and you have an S3 bucket, so an S3 bucket is basically a database, you could say, or a file storage where you can put images for your website and PDFs and stuff. And they're a bit hard to configure, so it's easy to make a mistake. And if you make a mistake, this can be world readable. So basically anyone can just download all the data there, which quite often you don't want. So really, configuration errors, open endpoints, that's a big issue, especially for e-commerce and digital services. Another one is really, I already said patch level, but patch level on your infrastructure and also not filtering traffic properly. And I'm not talking about fancy things, right? I'm talking about just baseline, actually having an overview, trying to search for vulnerabilities, find them, having an overview, because most of the malware is quite sophisticated, but if you'd have taken basic measures, it's not going to be successful, because it's just cheaper for the attackers to not have an excellent malware, because that's manufacturing cost, right?
Yes.
And then get most out of it. So if you do that, you're not secure from malware, but you just are more secure from the easy malware. And last but not least, really inefficient incident management. And I say that because it's what I see quite often is that there is an incident management process maybe defined, and then people tell me, well, we never have an incident, or once a year. Honestly, if you don't have incidents at least once a week, you probably don't see them. And then often it goes up the management ladder and down, and actually that's generating a lot of loss of revenue. And for me, I define an incident by having impact on revenue. Everything else is, not an incident. It might be alerting and you have to do something, but it's not a successful attack. And I think people just don't invest enough to have an emergency team that actually can do their job and make decisions without, having to call the CEO that honestly does just not understand the operational part of that. That person should just get the risk reporting, collaborate with legal, collaborate with communication, but have that trained, have that in your teams. That's probably the main problems I see. It's not directly vulnerabilities and attacks, but it's these kind of problem areas.
Thanks a lot. The next question is coming from Yanya Viskovic. As the cost of remaining cyber secure increase as a risk grow, should the cost be subsidized by federal government for startups and companies? Is there any help?
I think the short answer is the first part, yes. The second part, no. I'll begin with a question with the second part. Why should government pay for private industry? There is a system that actually does that. It's called socialism or communism, and where basically government runs the industry. I'm not saying I'm not valuing here, right? I'm just saying there is an economic theory. The point is, I think if you are doing business, and if you're doing business using digital assets, you have to pay for using those assets, because actually by using digital assets, your business becomes cheaper to conduct. So you save money, Before the computer, you had a typewriter and you needed to have all these papers. That inflicted a lot of cost, right? Of course, market speed was slower and everything, but you used the computer to actually increase your revenue. And it's only fair if you invest some part of that revenue into your security, or you don't and you accept the risk, and then you're gone from the market. So, and honestly, from a government perspective, if you are gone from the market, the competitor will come and fill the gap. That's why your business is not critical infrastructure. The game changes when we talk about critical infrastructure, because that means a lot of people suffer and we can't easily fill the gap. And there the rules are a little bit different. There we need to discuss, you know, how much support, but also there, in principle, every organization is responsible for their own security. Has the cost increased? Yes. Can you make more revenue with the IT infrastructure you have? Yes. If you're not coming out net positive, you have the wrong business model. Simple as that.
Yes, that's true. So there is another question related to critical infrastructure. Ivan Vukadin is asking, how do you estimate the security level of critical infrastructure in Switzerland? How good are the chances for paralyzing the power grids or energy provider with target attacks in Switzerland?
Good question, and the question that concerns a lot of people. So, we need to understand there is not the critical infrastructure. So, especially we talked about power grid, I think that was in the question. So, the power grid, you have a lot of local distributors, right? There are a lot of different companies and organizations in the mix, and they have different levels. Some of them are excellent, some of them are not as good. There are different levels. The big question is, how big is the vulnerability of that? And there I recommend to read the report that was just, I think, end of last year, published by the Bundesamt für Bevölkerungsschutz, so the civil protection, I don't know what Amt in
department?
English, but the department, yeah, it's not a department, it's the level below, but they published this report, can be found on their homepage. If you're interested, you can also write me an email and I will actually forward it to the person responsible, a colleague of mine, and we collaborate very well. And so they analyze that. You can get the details about that there. I think the important part is the second part of the question: would it be able to paralyze Switzerland with a cyber attack? The answer is, would it be possible? Yes, just as in every other country as well. The question is does it make sense? Is it feasible? How big is the likelihood, right? That's the area that we need to discuss. And now we need to talk about motivation, right? So would it be possible as a terror attack? It would be possible, but actually it's more efficient to plant a bomb, because terror is about inflicting fear in people, and people are more afraid if stuff explodes.
Yes.
Than, you know, if they don't have power for a couple hours. If it goes on, of course, you know, things will tumble, but that's probably not the most efficient way to inflict terror. In warfare, we're not at war, thank God, right? So that's probably not a risk that is very likely as well. Is it likely that someone really just tries and, you know, they start to manipulate things? I think that's the biggest risk that we have, with hopefully localized effects. So while I do think we need to increase the protection, absolutely, and there is a potential that something can happen, I also think the doomsday scenarios where nothing runs anymore in Switzerland is highly unlikely. Now, don't blame me if that happens tomorrow, right? Unlikely is also possible. That's important. But I think currently we should continue increasing the protection of critical infrastructure.
Yes.
But I also see we need to put the focus on the companies and the people in Switzerland that lose money every day because of the very real everyday cyber attacks. And we should not lose that out of sight because we're scared about the critical infrastructure alone.
Great. We have another question, next question from Elliot Lair. He is asking that, do you have some thoughts on SolarWinds Oregon attack?
Some thoughts. Well, that's rather unspecific, so of course I have some thoughts.
Maybe
yes.
Very short.
Yes, I can keep it very short. So I do think it just shows how effective supply chain attacks can be, how widespread. And it also shows why verifying what you get is important in one way or the other, but it also shows that you don't have full control and you need to react when you find out.
Great. The next question is coming from Wolfgang Siedler. Mr. Schütz, how do you see the cooperation with Swiss security companies dealing with small and medium enterprise customers in order to build up a more secure Switzerland? Is there a plan to aware the Swiss SMEs?
Sorry, I didn't get the last part.
Is there any plan to aware Swiss small and medium companies on the solutions or the specific technologies that they have to use?
Yes, so this is an important topic. So I'm not very happy with talking about SMEs or SMs, especially small and mediums, as one group, because they differ. You're a 10-person biotech company that uses mostly digital assets to do simulations and can lose a fortune if their database breach is a very different company than your carpenter that has 20 people that uses IT to send out emails to clients. So it's not really comparable. And therefore, just having one initiative to tell everyone what to do would be wrong, in my opinion. Baseline security, yes, and there is actually things, there are good things. So for example, together with ICT, formerly ICT Switzerland, now Digital Switzerland, we built a self-check where basically a small and medium enterprise can go and answer some questions to get a feel of where they stand in cybersecurity. We work with associations to actually address companies. We try to help them to then address their members, right, and help them. I think that's more suitable because you need to look at the business model, you need to look at the threat, right? But yes, absolutely. It's. I think we should do more in that aspect. The question is, how much does the government do, and how much do actually the companies themselves need to organize or their associations?
Good. Thanks a lot. The next question is coming from Emanuele Rossi. He's asking about the jobs that you will publish very soon. Is German language a mandatory requirement to work at National Center?
Well, it depends how good your CV is. No, joking aside, it is preferable if you speak all 3 languages of the country. You can get away with 2 as well, right? So did I. I mean, I'm learning Italian right now, but I can't speak Italian. So you can actually, if you speak French and Italian, that's fine, right? We do have a lot of German correspondence, so a willingness to actually learn German should be there, right? We also do business in English quite often because it's international. So I would not limit myself with languages. And the roles, I mean, just check what is published, but we will be looking for IT security architects. We will be looking for vulnerability managers. Yeah.
Great, thanks a lot. The next question or questions are about Swiss Cloud, and I have maybe 10 questions related somehow to Swiss Clouds. Would you like to share your thoughts on Swiss Cloud developments, any insights that we can answer maybe some of them instead of reading one by one?
Yeah, so I must disappoint you a little bit. I'm not the right person to ask about the details of Swiss Cloud because it's not my main responsibility. Of course, I'm exchanging with, for example, DTI, my colleague Danny Markwalder, on the topic from a security perspective. So I can elaborate a little bit on the security perspective. One of the ideas I hear often is, if you have a Swiss cloud, data remains in Switzerland, and that's more secure than sharing it with an international organization. And there's some truth to that, right? There are now companies like Microsoft has a data center in Switzerland. The question is, do we trust them enough that those data stay in Switzerland? And can we do some sort of certification? By the way, Germany looked in that area when they were talking about cloud solutions for their financial sector. These are a lot of questions from a security point of view. I don't think security should be the main driver for a Swiss cloud. It should be an important aspect, but not the main driver. That's probably as much as I can say, and I really encourage you, if you want to know more, to ask DTI.
Great. Thanks a lot, Mr. Schütz. The next question is coming from Elio Del Biagio. Digitalization in Switzerland, future of digital and electronic signatures. What do you think might happen this year in this area? And how do you think it will be addressed at the level of security and data protection?
So I assume the reference goes to the EID, which
Yes.
we will vote upon. So I just gave a presentation, I think, a week ago, last week, 2 weeks ago, I don't remember. I gave a presentation to interested parties from Paralyze and others. I see my role as really more looking at the technology side and at the security side than saying whether it's right or wrong. How it turns out, that I don't want to do a prognosis. I can't say. I don't know. I do think digital identity can increase security in general, because one big common denominator of attacks or scams or phishings is that the attackers are either anonymous or they impersonate someone. And if you would actually have a widely used identity that uses some strong mechanisms like two-factor authentication or strong cryptographic premises, and that could be used in a wide range. For example, emails could be automatically signed, or when you do a transaction, that can increase the security, right? That can decrease fraud.
Yes.
The market forces, I've worked in e-commerce. Honestly, people like their 4-letter password, and as long as companies don't lose more money than they make by offering people weak passwords, that's gonna persist as well. So I think an ID is a step in the right direction, absolutely, right? For different things, be this
Yes.
government, be this commerce, but it's not your silver bullet.
Great. The next question is coming from Hussein Doğan. Is developing its cybersecurity policy framework, to what extent does Switzerland take into account the European Union's approaches and perspectives in the area of cybersecurity? I would also add the relationship between National Center and ENISA of European Union.
Yes. So in general, there is a very good relation with our partners in the European Union, but also bilateral national levels, right? So we take this into consideration, of course. I mean, we're not in a vacuum, right? We have a lot of business with the countries in the European Union. So especially when it comes to regulation, we actually try hard not to reinvent the wheel. So, but you know, to adhere to what we need in Switzerland, but at the same time, don't generate incompatibilities. So this was, for example, the upcoming discussion. It's not yet there, but I'm sure it will come. It will be about regulation on product security of IT products. Do you need to provide some minimal level of security or patching or these kind of things? I know in the European Union, this is already a topic, and it's very unlikely that we would generate some law that is completely incompatible with others. Also, you need to understand that Switzerland has a very good position, as they can actively participate in ENISA, which usually you can't as a non-European Union member. So we have a very close relation there. And last but not least, the most important thing is, and this is where our system with the different department helps. We're working very closely with the Department of Foreign Affairs. And they, of course, have the diplomats and people in the European Union. They also have cybersecurity specialists on their end that we collaborate very closely, and they support us to actually get the information and exchange the information.
Great. The next question is coming from Marco Gonzalez. How much are cyber threats costing Switzerland, and who is bearing the brunt of the cost?
So I wish I knew. There is absolutely no statistic on the cost. We also don't have a reporting duty yet. So we will have a reporting duty for critical infrastructure. We are working this year on a proposal for the Federal Council. Then we can say a little bit about the damage inflicted on critical infrastructure, because they will report. Otherwise, everything else would be guessing, because there is a very high amount of dark figures. I can say that from gut feeling, right, no statistics, but I've seen companies that were lucky and it just cost them a couple thousand Swiss francs. I've seen company that paid more than 100,000 Swiss francs because of compromise to restore their system and get back to operation. And that's usually not including the loss of trade that you have. So,
Thanks.
you know, while your CIO might be very happy that finally the budget is approved to put more modern IT into place, probably do it before something happens. It's a good invest.
Yeah, I think also so. Robert Beer is asking, the trend also for businesses goes toward multi-cloud. More and more applications cannot be run on-prem anymore. How important is encryption in order to migrate cloud risks while being able to benefit from cloud opportunities for Swiss government or Swiss companies?
So let me start with the good news. As a company, most likely when you move into cloud, you get more secure, because many companies are not good at running IT, especially not infrastructure. So, you know, just because someone else cares for your data doesn't mean it gets worse. The question is now, what business are you in? How much can you trust your provider? How much can you trust? So there's the big three one, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, right? How much can you trust them? I think in most of the cases you can trust them, because it hurts them more if you find out that they've been playing bad and it hits the press than it does hurt or bring them benefit to actually get your data. Many of them have encryption mechanisms in place that are, you know, not even visible to you. Now you might have some data that you want to pull through an extra layer of encryption, especially with hybrid cloud layers. You can actually have a layer above that does all your transparent and decryption and your tracking of the data and so on. That logic, it's a good idea, right? But you don't want to encrypt everything, because cloud is not just a data storage. Cloud actually works with data. You have Lambda functions that can calculate on your data. If it's encryption, it can't, right? So you basically don't take the advantages of the cloud. The big advantage is that it can scale the infrastructure to your need. So then the question was with government, and actually we are discussing a multi-cloud strategy, right? We are discussing that in government. But of course, we have data that shouldn't be put in the cloud ever, right? And you need to come up with a good architecture and with good mechanisms to actually shield that off. That said, again, if your data is not a trade secret that other states want to get, or that Microsoft could usually benefit from, or Google, or whatever there is, you know, I would focus on actually securing access to that data from outside the cloud.
Great. The next question is from Florian Gantner. What are your thoughts in regard of cybersecurity and privacy about the plans of Swiss government to digitalize things like EID, electronic vaccination records, or even electronic vignette for the highways? Privacy and security concerns.
Yes, so I do think we take privacy very, very seriously in Switzerland. I think we proved that with the development of the Swiss COVID app. That was a collaboration between BAG, EPFL, NCSC, and I got a blackout on the company that actually developed the thing. Sorry, yeah, you can read it up. It's in the news everywhere. And that worked really well. So Switzerland was at the forefront of designing a protocol that allowed a COVID app that really doesn't track your data centrally, right? So in government today, that's why we can't give out certain figures. That's why we don't know how many people are using the app, right? You can estimate it from the calls, but you can't really say. And I think in the discussions that be this e-voting, be this EID, be this e-patient data, it's always very, very big on the agenda. And I think that's very, very important. I think digitalizing these services is key for the future of Switzerland. And not just these, many more. I do think the world gets more digital, and you need to offer digital services, because honestly, there's not much reason why you should still bring your taxes by hand into your municipal office, right? You can send it per post. That was the next step, and now you can do it in many areas online. I think it's key that we have these digital services to stay modern. Everyone else does it as well. I think it's key that we preserve privacy and that we put a focus on security, and that's why NCSC is here to offer organizing tests. So with Swisscovid, for example, we decided for a public security test where everything was released and interested security professionals could test it and report to us mistakes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schütz. We have lost 20 minutes, but there are a lot of questions actually. More than 40 questions we didn't answer yet.
I can go longer if you want.
If you have time, it's great pleasure. We can stay longer.
Oh, we can add another 15 minutes, but let's see.
Okay, let's see. Thanks a lot. Matthias Steiger is asking, if a company was a victim of cyber attack, would you recommend to make it public and create more awareness? At the moment, we don't hear often from attacks, no matter what they are all around us. Thank you very much, Matt Steiger.
So I think it's absolutely crucial. If you've been victim of an attack, talk about it, right? So so many companies have been victims. You're not the only one, right? And if you talk about it, especially inform your clients first, right? That gives trust, and trust is important because trust generates returning clients, and that's what you want. If your clients don't trust you anymore, you lose them, and that's a long-term impact. So while short-term, when you communicate, you will see an impact on your revenue. If you're listed at stock markets on your stocks, there are actually studies that show if you manage it well, after 2 years, there's no lasting negative effect. And communication is absolutely key for that. The other thing is, if you openly inform about it, people know if they attack you, it gets published, right? So for example, when the Swiss government published the report on the attack of RUAG a couple of years back, that was also a signal, we've seen you, that's what we know about you. That wasn't the only purpose, it was also, to spread the knowledge. That's the main person, to tell people how to protect, what to focus on. And the same thing is, if you make this public, also you help your peers. And while you might compete in other areas, you still are interested in a secure marketplace. So absolutely report it, make it public.
Thanks. The next question from Andreas Tokarski. From outside, it makes look like that each canton works on strategy related to cybersecurity. For example, they have own security operation centers. Do you see a need to increase cooperation? Are we on a good way to join national effort?
So yes, I do think we need to increase collaboration. That's important, but also it's important that cantons need their independence, A, by law, and B, also they have their own IT providers, they operate their own IT and security operations center, makes sense to have it there and not to centralize that on a government level. That is a very different political level. Some cantons are thinking about collaborating when it comes to security operations centers, but it's difficult, right? In case of an attack on all cantons, they need to function independently. Now, where do you dedicate the resources? Canton A, Canton B, all of them equally? That's important legal questions. When it comes to strategy, there's an addendum to the National Cybersecurity Strategy, which provides a strategy or a framework for strategy for the cantons, which they also follow. So the SVS, Sicherheitsverbund Schweiz, actually, they help us greatly by bridging between the cantons and the government. So we don't have to have 26 independent contacts, but basically we have this joint forum. And I think we can get better, as always, right? You're almost never perfect, but it's already happening.
Thanks a lot. The next question about, again, the job openings that you will have. Valon Jashari is asking that, is it possible to come to work from Germany at the National Center? Do you accept foreign nations to work for the center?
So in principle, it's possible, yes. You might need to run through a security clearance and you can't get the hired clearance, but that's not mandatory because very few people work on such high classified projects. So yes, you can. Yeah.
Good. Stanislav Ruzavin is asking, dear Mr. Schütz, Are there any Swiss governmental programs under which government collects internet communication from various internet companies? Anything similar to Prisma, Paralyze, etc.? How do you evaluate internet data privacy level in Switzerland? And thank you.
So there are none that I know of that are likely to the ones there. What you do have is, of course, if there is a criminal case, you can do legal interception under the according law. But even there, it's not like we monitor, my people don't monitor, for example, the traffic of Swisscom. We're not allowed to do that. And this brings me to an interesting point. So, for example, what we do is when we get information or we see something, we see from either public information or we get through one of our partners or in our own networks, or we just see a threat. And for example, let's say there is an IP from a company that actually is connecting to one of the known criminal infrastructures, and we see that. Usually, it's hard to find out the company because they're hidden behind the IP of their provider. And what we then do is usually we go to the provider and tell the provider, hey, one of your clients is having a problem, please inform them. And then it's really in the hand of the provider. We can't force the provider to inform that company. Now, also there we see differences. We see some providers that take it very seriously and they will do everything. And we see some providers that write a letter that arrives 3 days later, which, might be too late. It will definitely be, so I don't think we need to discuss that, we analyze all the data traffic in Switzerland, also from the private computers and so on. I don't think that matches well with our understanding of privacy and also with the capabilities and capacities. But I do think we need to discuss whether we can look up victims in a more direct manner or maybe inform them in a more direct manner rather than going that extra loop through providers, for example. Another thing is what we can also do since beginning of this year. So there was a change in the law that regulates telecommunications internet service providers. So we can now actually ask them to do certain security measures, and they are then obligated by law. Again, there it's not the idea to regulate everything, but it's the idea to maybe put some things in there that make the level a bit more equal between the different service providers.
As a data protection lecturer at the University of St. Gallen, I have a question related to topics. As you know, ADOP, the National Information Security Commission of the Switzerland, they do revision, or actually it's in Parliament right now, the revision of Swiss Data Protection Act. Do you have any collaboration with ADOP, or do you advise them on kind of data security matters that they have to bring to the legal level?
Yes, so we have a collaboration, yes. Depending on the project, it's close or less close. In the Swiss COVID app, we had a very close collaboration. We are not always agreeing, that's important to know, right? But we definitely have the same goal in the end. And quite often we also agree. And it's actually a good collaboration because while they do understand technology, they do have a little bit more focus on the legal side, right? We have a little bit more focus on the technical side, and sometimes it's good if we can explain things to each other and really get a more complete picture of the situation.
Thanks a lot. The next question is from Oliver Moll. Mr. Schütz, in Switzerland, do actually the large or sophisticated attacks target specific industries, company size, or any they are related to a generic? Do this target have actually the mean, human, technological, financial mean to protect themselves against attackers that could be pretty well funded? Is there any specific sectors in Switzerland?
So I can't really talk about details there because we sign confidentiality agreements with victims, right? So can't talk about special victims. When we look at sectors, generally you can say attacks come and go in waves. That's one thing that is pretty typical. Of course, there are targeted attacks like everywhere in the world, right? Switzerland is really not special. Do the companies have the mean to defend themselves? Most often they do. At the same time, we of course support. So if there is an incident, that's what Melanie, that is now integrated in the NCSC, was actually built for, to support there. So we do that. There was a lot of speculation last year whether the healthcare sector was a specific target. We could not confirm that, while in other countries this was certainly the case, that there were attacks on hospitals, for example, or on producers of vaccines. We could not confirm that in Switzerland. What we have seen is an increase in actually fraudulent web shops selling drugs that did not work against corona, selling fake protective material. Also other scams where basically people would send infected attachments telling you, if you open that file, you see who is infected in your neighborhood. You know, using phishing techniques, using malware. We've seen that kind of attacks, but you know, when there is a big football game, they use the football game as a theme. We've seen more that this theme was used in the end to stage attacks, and actually it was a very positive experience. We were worried that there were more targeted attacks on the healthcare sector. That's why we built, for example, additional filtering infrastructure that would have stood ready if we needed to protect hospitals and put them behind our infrastructure. We luckily didn't need it. And also, we actually started to give out a daily report, not only within government, but also to the cantons, to police, with operational intelligence. Our colleagues from the intelligence services supported us greatly there. And it was well valued, because suddenly cyberspace was less of a concern because they knew what's actually happening.
Great, thanks a lot. Wes Forent is asking, how do you think Huawei's network products will affect security and privacy in Switzerland? Many parts of Europe have already banned the use of Huawei products in various areas. Will Switzerland have to decide here as well, or what do you think this will be in the future?
So currently, the thing is, when we look, for example, at 5G, in Switzerland, we have 3 major providers and they all chose different products. That adds to the resilience, right? I really don't, I can't comment on whether Huawei is good or bad, because I just don't know, right? I know their technology is there. Also, countries that banned it still use some of the technology. It's really hard to comment. It's probably more on a political level to comment. Security-wise, I always like to look at different devices and in the same manner, right? You know, that's why I really like the idea of the National Testing Center that the Canton of Zug pushes forward, because we have excellently educated people when it comes to verification of systems. ETH Zurich is very strong in that area. And, you know, it would be nice if those people can actually work on that topic. And, you know, then we could probably take a closer look and know more, right?
Yes, that's absolutely right. Stefan Baltes is asking, dear Mr. Schütz, COVID-19 has shown the strengths and the weakness in digitalization efforts in many countries. What do you think are the most important learnings in terms of cybersecurity and the crisis management in Switzerland? Do you think Switzerland's digitalization strategy needs to be altered?
So I begin at the end. I think the next strategy needs to be evolved. So it's not a revolution, it's an evolution, right? I think it's a good basis. It's one of the better strategies when you look at different ones. I think it can be improved to have less strategic goal with a clearer focus. So I think it needs to be improved. When it comes to cybersecurity, I think the pandemic shows how important it is to have compatible systems that can exchange data, right? APIs that are some sort of streamlined. And what this means for security is that when we connect systems, that we need to ensure overall security, and we need to build infrastructure that supports that. And that's why, for example, there is a project that comes from ETH Zurich, which is called Cyan, which generates secure routing, right? which means currently if you send data from, or our data that is transferred, probably takes a detour to other countries, right? And sometimes this can be abused to reroute traffic through a specific country where they analyze it. Cyan, very simply speaking, makes this impossible, right? It also protects you better from denial of service attacks. And of course, these are technologies that become interesting when we say, okay, if we have e-government services, can we actually contact the municipalities, to the cantons, to the government, to the federal government in a secure manner, that the traffic stays within this virtual shield, right? Can we do that for sectors? Can we then do more secure business within that bubble and actually less secure outside? And I think that needs to go into the strategy a little bit more. And I think that's definitely things to discuss. The other thing is what COVID has also shown is that it's important that everyone is responsible for their own infrastructure that they operate. You can't come from the outside and just fix everything. It's not efficient, doesn't work. So ownership is important, just as much as collaboration is. And it's important that different areas can, as independently as possible, develop, right? So if you want to go fast, you should be able to move fast, team autonomy. And you can actually achieve that by harmonizing interfaces. But there's still a long road ahead of us.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Schütz. The next question is from Christian Hager. How does the latest cyber attack on FireEye impact Switzerland as a nation?
So these kind of attacks, so these scales of breaches or attacks, of course, trigger always that first we check within the administration if we have vulnerable systems, or if we are infected, or if we have attackers in our networks. So that's something that's automatically triggered, where we go and we take a look, and if we find something, we isolate it, and if we don't find anything, then we're happy. The second thing is that either industry has been warned directly. So when we look at Citrix, with the Citrix vulnerability, which was beginning last year, there basically Citrix informed all of their clients. So we don't really repeat that warning, but we are ready to support. Or in that area where it's just big, we also sometimes inform. And then of course we collaborate with trying to provide information how you can detect whether you've been victim, unless this is already provided from someone, and B, helping actually to deal with it if you suspect that you've been a victim, or if you actually have been a victim. And so for that, we've been in contact with some companies that were concerned, but we do not have any report on any damage that was done.
Thanks a lot. Nina van Landschot is asking, within your national center, how do you arrange your cyber threat intelligence?
So what we have is, if you remember, Melanie basically was a collaboration between a team in the intelligence service that basically takes the information and generates intelligence out of the information, and a team in the financial department. That's now part of NCSC, so that collaboration continues. At the same time, we also, of course, receive reports, and we really try to find where are the same groups behind it, what is the attack methods used. It's actually pretty simple. It's like any company does it, right? There's no magic to it. And I always say, if you want to be really good at threat intelligence, talk to the marketing department of the big tech companies.
Yes.
Because all they do is data analytics to predict markets. And if you can do that in cyber, then you're good, right? But even less is fine. It's not magic, right? You get information, you analyze the information, you get some support in automation, right? That can directly do classification, but it's not magic.
Great. The Sergio Justiniano is asking again, what do you think it should be the approach as a company to prepare your or itself for a possible cyber attack incident? For a companies, maybe. yeah, 4 or 5 steps?
Yeah, I think the most important step that many companies don't do is make a list of everything that concerns you in security, right? Do you have missing vulnerability management? Do you have an inefficient incident response process? Do you regularly scan your networks from the outside, from the inside? Do you do testing? So if you're an e-commerce, do you have testing of the pieces before you put them online? Do you do security testing? Make a list with everything, and bring people together and actually ask your departments to report on where they see the weaknesses. That's step one. And then in the board, at the table, you discuss these, and you actually, with that, you should get the information. How easy is it to fix? How long does it take? How much does it cost? How important is it? And then you immediately start with the ones that are easy to fix and cheap. Even if they're just a small piece, just do it, right? That's out of the way, that's done. And then actually you take those that have a big impact on the business and that are cheap or medium to fix. You focus on those. Don't take the ones that have a huge impact on the business, but that cost you millions, right? You focus on that, and you just go one piece after another. Don't try to solve everything at once. Focus, focus, finish a project, go into the next one. That's very, very important. I think the most important parts of the puzzle is get the proper vulnerability management. And that doesn't mean you have to search for them yourself. There's companies that can do that for you. But it's important, you need to understand that a pen test does not show you vulnerabilities. It's not a test for vulnerabilities. A pen test is a resiliency test. It tells you on average how long it takes an attacker to enter your network, because you give your tester all information. So that's the super attacker, that then actually you can say, okay, and the real attacker is 100 times slower. So that's how long I can react. But you can do scans, port scans from outside, port scans from inside. You can do static code analysis if you develop code, dynamic code analysis, and start to build up that. Know where you have the weaknesses. If you have a critical weakness, handle it as an incident. Be brave. Sometimes it's not worth fixing a vulnerability, but then define what you do to detect there better. That's really one of the key aspects. The second one is risk management. IT risks are risks, deal with them, and deal with them at board level. That's important.
The question is coming from Yamil Khalita, asking that if I were a victim of cyber fraud, where I can report this fraud?
So generally you can go to the police, and that's what you should do in the end. Of course, we are happy if you report it also on our website, right? We are currently giving advice, so if you report it on our website, we will still tell you go to the police, right? Yes. Currently, we are not yet in a state where this automatically is transferred to the police and then everything is done. So you still have to do the step yourself. But that's the thing. Yeah, go to the police and tell us for the statistics, and we might help you. We might give you a couple of tips so it doesn't happen to you in the future.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Schütz. We have one question, but it's not related to the topic. Joachim Pintel is asking that Mr. Schütz is building something up behind the machine. Yeah. What's this?
So actually, I think what you see is my power supply that doesn't work anymore. I'm fixing it, but I'm building a smart irrigation system because I want to go on holiday in summer and the plants need watering. So I developed a decentralized irrigation system with microcontrollers and a nice, neat web, well, not so nice, I'm not a designer, but a web interface where you can basically monitor it. So yeah, I'll publish that whenever I'm ready to publish. So
super. Do you have any social media channel or accounts that we can follow you?
Well, I'm not very good at social media. People already recognized I do have a Twitter account, a personal Twitter account, right? We are currently generating an official accounts in social media, so that will be for the official information. I do have a Facebook account, but honestly, I don't really use it that often. And LinkedIn, I just connect to people that I personally met. So there's a little bit of a hurdle there, but explain to me why it's absolutely important that we meet and talk when we can meet again. And yeah, that's
great. Mr. Schütz, I think we are coming to the end. Unfortunately, we have lost 5 minutes, let's say. Would you like to predict the future of the cybersecurity in Switzerland within several sentences and give top 3 advice to our live viewers right now?
Yes, so predictions, one thing is always they're wrong, right? But they might guide us in a direction and actually help us to understand where to move. So my prediction is, and I actually think that one will be right, digitalization increases. It's not going away, it's getting more. More devices will be networked, you will use more smart devices in your home, at work, the digitalization of the supply chain increases. Also moving digital assets is rather easy. So, if you don't like it in one place, you will move to another one. And that will heavily influence our strategy, how we need to tackle the cybersecurity topics. It changes a bit the perception. It's, if a company doesn't like it and can go away, that needs us to rethink how can we actually, in the area of cybersecurity, contribute towards making Switzerland or keeping Switzerland an attractive place to do business, to conduct business.
Yes.
Also, I think we need to generate frame conditions that allow digital business in the future, modern business model, new business model, and actually innovation. I don't think we will ever be the startup nation that actually has all these unicorns. That's not in the nature of Swiss people. I do see, however, a big chance of a new area of family businesses that also operate on a global scale that are long-lasting in the digital area. And I honestly see the main challenge that we collaborate between economy, between private citizens, between the government, between all the different areas, really, to find good solutions, and that we actually start doing things. That's the most important. Paper can be produced. It's sometimes important. I like documentation, but we also need to do things. And that's really my advice to you. Don't be afraid to break things, because breaking things is good. You learn something, and also you need to fix it. That means you learn even more. So when it comes to security, don't do anything illegal, but there are a lot of possible ways where you can break things. Don't be afraid of technology. Cybersecurity is about technology. You need to learn it. You need to understand it. So in the NCSC, we actually train our non-tech people with tech topics. So in the last lesson, they actually learned how to build a circuit. So,
Yes.
Just don't be afraid. It's there. It's not going away. Don't panic. The state is okay, but we need to work on it that it remains okay and gets better.
Mr. Schütz, I would like to thank you on behalf of our audience, on behalf of Swiss Cyber Forum's teams, and on behalf of me. Thank you very much for your time. I know you are super busy. You have very busy schedule, but you took your time. You came here. You shared your thoughts with us. We are very pleased and honored. Thanks a lot, and stay safe. Maybe next time we will see each other online or on site. Who knows?
Yeah, I have to thank you and each and every one of you. Actually, I appreciate you taking the time listening to me, and it shows the interest. And I really appreciate people like you who are interested, who ask questions, and who actually also share ideas. So the thank is mine.
It was our pleasure. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot to our audience. Stay safe. Sorry that we couldn't answer all the questions, but maybe next time. Who knows? Stay safe.
I'm more than happy to join again. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Have a good day, everyone.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.